Okay.
Okay.
All right. I was trying. Oh, I do have a background. Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
you do.
Okay, let me see. Okay, I'll do it that way. All right. It was just a discussion, girl.
Okay. All right, talk.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Just getting old. What can I say? I'm
You
getting
don't look
wrinkles.
old.
I've got more wrinkles than I had before, so I've been using the touch-up features on the Zoom to make myself look glamorous.
Oh, you're always glamorous, girl.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is just well, let me just let you know what's going on. Okay. I have to speak on redlining on Friday, the 9th. I believe
Okay.
that is the 9th. And so the
That's a
reason why I went,
Saturday. That's a Saturday.
oh gosh. Okay. Oh, now you got me wondering, do I have something to do? Okay, so yeah, so basically I just know that you had some history in regards to understanding what redlining was, and how it affected maybe the community in which you lived, or why you were living in certain areas of San Diego during the time that you were living in those areas. And so I remember the story slightly, but I wanted to, get it recorded. So, as maybe one of my examples of,
Okay.
of what that is. It's for my historical background information.
Okay. My experience. You want me to start now?
Yeah.
Okay. My experience was that my parents moved us to San Diego, California in 1955. And in 1955, there were only two places that Black people could go, and it was always south of the Highway 94. Okay. And that was a red line district. And so African Americans could not buy property to build beyond Highway 94, north of Highway 94. And of course, during the civil rights struggle in the mid to late 60s, people pushed the boundaries. Black people pushed boundaries because the NAACP and the San Diego Urban League became very active in demonstrating, as well as the Congress of Racial Equality became very instrumental in demonstrating and doing sit-ins in the mid 60s against banks like the Bank of America downtown. And because I remember experiencing the sit-in, I was a teenager at the time, and my parents wanted me to experience the, I suppose, nonviolent civil disobedience. And so we did that with Congress of Racial Equality, and it's called CORE. And the head of CORE was, I'm trying to remember his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it later on. But other people that were involved were Carol Wayman and some other leaders. But I remember Carol Wayman was one of the leaders, and they were mainly Black professionals who were sensitive to the times, and at the same time they wavered on whether they wanted to support Martin Luther King Jr. or not. Of course, my father and mother were right behind the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and then later on SNCC, which was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that was a part of that. And so they sent funds to that. But my personal relationship with redlining was that we were one of a few Black families who had been instrumental in being able to move into an area called Valencia Park. And Valencia Park was all white at the time, but there was a white flight. The real estate and land developers were trying to allow it. They were telling white people that their property values were going to go down because they were moving. They systematically moved African Americans and Latinos who were middle class and who were middle class wage owners, wage earners into that area. Because my father was a social worker, my mother was a teacher. We lived 2 doors down from a Latino family, and then two Latino families who were working class, and one was a construction one had a construction company, and the other had a produce business. We were sandwiched between 2 white people, and across the street was a new housing development where white people were going into it. So we were on the fringes of what is now considered skyline, which at that particular time was all white. The school I went to was pretty much all white, except there were more and more families moving in between 1955 and 1961 into this area called Valencia Park. And so the complexion of the school changed, as well as the complexion of the enrollees of the school, even though the complexion of the teachers remained the same. There were no Black teachers at all. My mother, when she was teaching, she had to teach at Logan Elementary, which was in Logan Heights, what's now called Barrio Logan. And all the teachers were segregated at that particular time. The teaching staff, Black teachers could not teach outside of the areas where African American and Latino children were educated and resided. It was strange. The local community decided to challenge the banks, and it was mainly the San Diego Urban League and in concert with the NAACP and the Congress of Racial Equality that pushed the envelope. And by then they were doing more than just sit-ins and writing letters. They were actually doing more protests, as well as talking to city officials and county officials about this. There was still no movement until there was I think in the mid-60s, there was a movement to move outside of Highway 94, just because of the housing crisis and the shortages. As more and more people more and more population started to grow, there were Black and brown in the Logan Heights area. There was just no more room for them. And I remember Dr. John Kimbrough bought property in the only place that he could buy property, and that was in Logan Heights at the time. And that was off of Market Street, somewhere off of Market Street. I can't remember where. Dr. Richardson, my father-in-law, purchased property and bought a house and built a house from scratch on property north of 94. And that was during the time when we also saw Encanto open up to Black people. It was always Black people with means. They were like professional people, as well as athletes who could afford, or retired athletes who could afford the cost of housing. So it was always inflated for African Americans, but a lot of African Americans didn't know that, but they qualified because they had the means. They were actually, a lot of them were upper middle class, but had to run the gauntlet of the redlining that was done. By the time Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and Lyndon Baines Johnson, the new president, was sworn in, he realized that there was a problem, and he did not address it out of the goodness of his heart. He did it out of he passed the civil rights legislation, including housing, new housing opportunity acts, based upon the unrest that was happening with by 65 and 66, there was the Watts riots, and people started protesting and burning things down all across the United, especially in 68 when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And so because of all of this pressure and the movement that African Americans made all over the United States, there was a reckoning, and the financial community had to come clean, and they had to do something about that. And so there was some federal housing and urban development laws that were enacted against housing discrimination. This meant, and then there were some test cases where if there was any housing discrimination found, that you could families could actually have a lawsuit. But a lot of Black families didn't have. Oops, let me see. I just dropped my keyboard. Let me put it down. They had to have test cases. So the San Diego Urban League contracted with Housing and Urban Development, the county housing authority was called at the time. The San Diego Housing Authority, and the which got their money from the Housing and Urban Development to let me turn this phone off too. So anyway, they were doing test cases, and actually in the 80s, they actually would send a Black couple in, and we would pose as husband and wife, me and another Urban League employee. We would pose as a husband and wife, and we would inquire about housing rentals, housing applications for housing in what were considered the white areas, where you could be densely populated with white people. And then the Urban League would send in a white couple. And the white couple, of course, if they weren't part of the Urban League, they would get a stipend for this. And they would go in, and it was a test case to see who actually was, there was a series of questions and surveys on how you were treated. And there were some test cases, and as a result of that, there was some legal action that was taken in San Diego against land developers and homeowners who refused to sell or rent to African Americans. I once had a door slammed in my face. When I went to apply for an apartment, I wanted to get a 2-bedroom apartment for me and my husband in the 60s, and in the late 60s, and in Encanto of all areas. Encanto was pretty white at that particular time. And the man was very, very friendly to me over the phone. When I went there with my daughter, my little girl, Angela, he took one look at me and her and slammed the door. And his wife said, "What's the matter?" And he yelled out, "I won't have any niggers coming here," And his wife would say, and then I knocked on the door again because I I was surprised
Okay.
because I grew up in Claremont, which was my parents had busted through Claremont. The only reason why we got into Claremont, which was all white, and I was the first white student there, was because my father went in, and he was pretty light skinned. You met my dad,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and so he was pretty light skinned, and and his hair was about as straight as mine is now. But
Okay.
this is just age. What can I say? It used to be curly like yours. You remember?
Oh yeah. Okay.
So so anyway, my dad went in and they offered him a house right away, and my father signed the papers and everything. And then in marched the rest of us, Barnwell. And
Okay.
we were multi-hued because I had one brother, Frederick, with blue eyes and straight hair and fair skin, and another brother, Tony, who was brown skinned with nappy hair. And I was right in the middle. Me and my sister Celeste were right in the middle at the time. Um, we were darker skinned then because we were playing in the sun at the beach all the time.
Right.
We were at the beach all the time. So anyway, I was the first African American graduate from Claremont High School, and I was
Wow.
a loner. And you know, when I told people that I was African American in those days, colored, my best friends were going like, "We won't tell anybody." I was going like, "What do you
Okay.
mean?" So I started writing articles about that. But I remember that the people in Claremont actually had signed a petition, circulated a petition to try and oust us from the community. And of course,
Mm.
it couldn't stick, you know, but they thought that a petition would work to put pressure on us to leave, and it didn't. And so my mother and father just thumbed their noses, and we went about our business and lived in our all white community. And my mother felt really proud. She felt as if she had arrived.
Oh, okay. Right.
A lot of Black people thought they had arrived when they moved into Encanto, because in Canto they had new homes at that particular time, and we call them gingerbread houses
Yeah,
because
yes, I was driving that around the neighborhood and I said, these homes are like gingerbread houses.
that's what we call them. We call them
Wow.
gingerbread houses. Some of them have been customized since then, but they
Mhm.
started off as gingerbread houses with a little lattice and the little holes,
Yeah.
and Hansel and Gretel type of houses.
Yes.
So, so that's my I saw the eastward. It was probably the southward and the eastward expansion of African Americans into territories like and migratory patterns, housing patterns into territories like Spring Valley and Canto. Spring Valley was once home to the um, John Birch Society, which was a far right hate group
Oh,
and very conservative against African Americans and people of color. And then they moved out of Spring Valley, where the headquarters were, as we moved in, as Black and brown people moved in, and they still maintained their toehold in Spring Valley. White people maintain their toehold in around areas like Casa de Oro and Mount Helix, but the people who were part of that John Birch Society moved into Santee, where there's still vestiges of white supremacists there in Santee. And then there's, of course, a pocket here where I live in Ramona.
right.
But since the regime change here I call it a regime change.
Mhm.
Since the regime change, people are not driving down the street with Confederate flags and waving the Trump flag as much as they used to.
Right, right.
Nice.
Yeah, see that.
But I used to drive down roads just when I first moved here in 2020, and I saw Confederate flags. People are flag wavers up here in Ramona, California.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
You saw that when you were here visiting.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I did.
did I give you enough information about?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think I know that it's not everything, because we didn't mention the 70s too much, but from my recollection, moving from Southeast San Diego, Emerald Hills, and I think I was at 4 or 5 years old, we moved into Del Cerro, and there were a few Black families in Del Cerro. So, I mean, I know that my parents, broke that, or
color
helped
line.
break
It's
that.
like breaking a color line, but it's also,
Yes.
it's like crossing over that red line that was invisible.
Yes.
It was an invisible red line, but the reason why they called it redlining is because back in the day, bankers had regions and they would actually have a red line drawn around it, and they would contain us. We were colonized. We were internally colonized people. And so if you know anything about internal colonization, it's where people they have a similar language, a similar culture, and a similar culture, education, and economy. They have to have an economy. And so the economy was based on the colonialist principle of trying to exploit us and exploit it. And so there was a lot of work that was done when I was a political science major about internal colonies, and that the ghetto, as we called it, the ghetto there are communities of color that were considered internally colonized because they were deficient of access to healthy grocery access to, and there were more churches, and there were more mom and pop grocery stores and there were more liquor stores than mom and pop grocery stores. So the liquor stores actually would exploit, the mom and pop grocery stores would exploit, and usually the people who own them didn't even live in the community. Right. And that's how the colonialists do in third world, we're doing in third world countries. And so the model was pretty much intact. And they probably based it upon what land developers and systematic institutionalized racism did for people in terms of all types of education, institutions such as educational institutions, such as colleges, universities, elementary schools, even the schools that you went to, the regions where you could shop, the places where you could buy clothes. There was even times when Black people were followed around if they went into a store, and sometimes they were accused of stealing merchandise. Downtown San Diego, I remember in the 60s, me and my husband went into Woolworths, and we were Woolworths of all places.
Okay.
And we were followed from the time we walked in until the time we walked out.
Mm-hmm.
And we had little Angie with us, and we were just looking for stuff, I can't remember what we were in the store for, but I was not aware of that because I grew up in Claremont, and I really didn't shop. My mother shopped, but my mother was a high-end shopper. She had money, so she would just flaunt her money at places like Saks Fifth Avenue, and the May Company. But being a teenager, I didn't shop. But when I got married and started shopping, I was introduced to racism, institutionalized racism, the way they treated customers, even downtown at the not just the convenience stores, but also uh, the supermarkets.
Hmm.
And but you know what? All money is green. So if you have enough money, you can get anything. And
Right.
so, like people who were famous, like Archie Moore, he could buy things, and everybody was really proud. White folks were proud of him because he was a lightweight or middleweight champion of the world, right? So,
Right.
but even Archie Moore couldn't buy a house north of 94. He bought a house and built his house right off of 15, which used to be called Wabash Avenue. And he was like,
Oh, that was Wabash.
he was in a ditch. He was in a gully, and and I don't know why he chose that property. Maybe it was the only property that he could get at the time, but it was right there next to the wash, and it was amazing. You know where Market Street is, and 15.
Yeah, I see it all the time.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
a little bit south of Market, southeast of Market in Logan Heights. That's where Archie Moore had his house. But then he built a ranch out here in Ramona, and
Mm.
for his training site. I guess he had enough money. He just bought a ranch, and it became like a place where he could train, and it became famous. So
Wow. Didn't know that one.
yeah, in fact, they renamed the street. They call it Archie Moore Way.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. And Archie Moore's son was on the cover of Ramona Sentinel a couple of weeks ago. So I said, whoa, they're finally giving credit where credit is due. So the complexion of the United States is changing because of
Yes.
the new immigrants that are coming in, and then the way that and the population growth amongst people of color, and that includes Asians, Native Americans, Latinos or Latinx or Hispanics, whatever you want to call them, and among African Americans. It used to be that our birth rate was really, really high. Now it's a lot lower.
Yeah.
And what's far surpassed in San Diego are the immigrant populations that are from places like Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Ghana.
Hmm.
And I understand we're going to have an influx of, and we had some Middle Easterns come in. And they usually they have places where the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is a federal organization for resettlement, will resettle refugees and immigrants, and they usually settle them in places like El Cajon and in Kearney Mesa now.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that there are more African immigrants up here in Ramona now. There are more Black people coming up here.
Wow.
I'm going,
Okay.
whoa, 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 oh, nice. But you know
Okay.
what? The awareness, the cultural awareness of brotherhood and sisterhood is not strong anymore. A Black person can pass you right by and never say hello or anything. Of course,
Yeah.
I'm so light skinned, people think I'm Mexican anyway, especially with the white hair. They come up to me speaking Spanish all the time. Ugh.
Okay. Yeah. So you know what?
What?
So with okay, so I've only experienced the discrimination once, and I think you already knew that when I shared with you about Faison Love's sister when she was staying with me and she was looking for an apartment, and we made phone calls and whatnot. And I called for this one place that was in La Mesa, where I had lived, resided on Waite Drive. And the gentleman on the phone was like, oh, yes, it's available, So I said, well, we'll be on our way. So we drove there, and then we got out the car. And as we were walking up, there was a man on the ladder painting the part of the trim of the house.
Uh-huh.
And I spoke with him, and, Kim was right next to me, and he says, oh, we don't have anything available. So, and at that point, I said, but I called, and he says, no, we don't have anything available.
Yeah.
And at that point, I actually cried because I hadn't experienced that type of upfront discrimination. And it just kind of like blew my mind that
Yeah.
this still happens today. And one of the things that I've noticed, there's gentrification happening in my community now in Emerald Hills. And I see white families walking around and, and
Buying up property, but you know what? A lot of times they're buying homes that have already been sold by corporations. Corporations are trying to buy up blocks and blocks of homes.
Yeah. Yes. And they've been doing that quite a bit. So one of the things I've heard is that redlining is still happening today. Maybe not in the same way that it was, they had the maps with the, the boundaries of where, so red being a place, that undesirable place to purchase homes.
It was a border.
Mhm.
Redlining was just an area that was drawn out and would say, within this circle or within this circumference that we've drawn out, Black people cannot live outside of this red line.
Mm.
So we were contained. It was like almost like Native Americans that were displaced and then contained in reservations.
Like a reservation.
On land that they were moved off of their land a lot of times, or their land was taken, and then they had like a little piece of what they used to have. And it's still going on today. It's based on greed, and it's based on systematic, institutionalized racism in all forms. Every single institution will practice it, and they practice racism and sexism.
When did they remove natives off of the land? And I'm thinking, like, even here in San Diego, like, when do you know when they pushed them off of their land? Even here in
no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of that history, but I do know that the natives in I don't know a lot of the history. I just don't. But yeah. I remember how the land was shrunk. Mm. It was shrunk, even in because in the 70s there was more native land in the El Cajon area and in the what they call Rancho San Diego, going towards Sequan. A lot of that was native land, going towards Hamul and Campo and all of that, because it was a spillover. There were no boundaries between the Kumeyaay nation that lived below the border of the California border, and then above the California border. But I think that the lines were drawn by, I do know that there was a specific battle in I guess where the rancheros and the Mexicanos had to fight for their land against the U.S. cavalry. And there was a last stand in, I'm trying to remember the name of the place because I pass it all the time when I go north. Let's see. I'm gonna go. Let's see. San Pasqual,
Oh,
the Battle of San Pasqual.
okay. And I've heard of that.
Okay.
Never read about it though.
The Battle of San Pasqual was the last stand of Indians, Native Americans, and Mexican people who were intermarried. They had to fight for their land, and they were killed by the U.S. cavalry. And that was when there was this Western expansion to take over California, and it was done by force. It was done illegally, when they so-called purchased the land from Mexico. But there was a war. They call it the Spanish-American War.
Yep. That's the war.
The Mexican-American War, as if Mexico started it, right? But it wasn't a Mexican-American War, and that was in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And they took California from people and they moved people off of the property. They moved them off the property so that they moved them off of their rancheros, and they stole their land. They did it by any means necessary. They did it by raping, by pillaging, by killing. They did it legally. They did it illegally. However they could do it, they did it. And the United States government and white people were complicit. And that's how deep things are, and if you look at and that's why all these areas have Mexican names to them.
Okay, right.
And Indian names to them, Native American names to them,
Right.
All of this land belonged to,
Yeah, to Mexico.
To Mexico and Indios. And Indians, Native Americans spoke Spanish as well as their native languages as well. So, in fact, remember when we were going up Cowles Mountain?
Yes.
Cowles Mountain is not really named Cowles Mountain. It was historically a powerful spot named by Native Americans. It was their spot, and this colonel decided to go up the mountain and claim it as his and name it as his. Claim it and name it.
Right.
And so that's why it has his name on it. But there's a San Pasqual Battle State Historic Park. If you ever want to go and visit it sometime, I'll go with you because it's right on 67. It's on 78, the route that I go down the mountain. In fact, you and I have gone down that way before.
Okay.
Of course, you got scared. You thought I was going to go off the side of the mountain.
Girl, I know you like to fly. Like, woo! You've always been good at driving those mountains, though, girl.
But you were on the passenger side, so all you could do is when you looked over, you thought for sure you were going to fly off the edge.
Yeah.
But we didn't. So I used to go visit those places, like the battlefield, the historic park, and then there was a trading post that Tom Lido turned me on to, and I got a chance to talk to some Native women from the Paula Valley Palma Valley, who told me about the history, and she had like it wasn't really a trading post. It was right there, close to where the San Pasqual Battlefield State Historic Park is,
Mhm.
and she talked about the history. Of course, she's probably dead now because she was like real old in the in the in the 90s I visited her when we visited. So
Yeah, she'd probably be 100 and something right now, huh? At least 100.
girl, I've only got 25 years to go before I'm going to be 100. That's like short. That's a drop in the bucket. You know that?
Yeah, because them kids be turning 25 like that. Like,
Yeah. You know, my great grandson is in high school. He's getting ready to graduate next year.
what?
Yes,
Girl?
my great grandson, Andrew
Wow.
Lavage, and Andrea Jr. is hitting the late 60s. I mean
Mm,
the late 30s.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going like, oh my goodness. You remember my little granddaughter, Andrea Jr.?
Yes, I remember all of them. It's just amazing how quickly time flies, just so fast, so fast. Yeah. Well, girl, I always appreciate you, sharing history with me, and
Yeah.
you're so well spoken. I almost feel like you should be a professor. You're really good and you have a good memory. Yeah.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I had to grab it for a minute and try and think of who was there was this guy that was the head of the Congress of Racial Equality,
Mm.
and the reason why my mother stopped going to core meetings was because the man who was the leader, who was the president of core,
Mhm.
was sleeping white, and in those days, it was like, you know, it was like unheard of for a black man to have a white woman, and
Yeah. Yeah, and I have no clue who it is. You would think that I would know at least something, right? The only person that they speak about being a leader of CORE, I don't know if they said he was president or he just was one of the outspoken ones, was Hal Brown.
that's who it was.
Was it?
Hal Brown had a white wife.
He did.
Yeah.
He doesn't now. That's
Well,
for
he did then,
mm,
and
okay.
lots of people left the organization.
Because of that.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, and Uncle Henry was the national vice chair of CORE.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, CORE got infiltrated too.
Oh.
Um, their national leader apparently was a FBI operative.
Who, Farmer?
No, not Farmer. The guy after that.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I guess they don't bring his name up.
And um, and lots of people left that organization, and they just stuck with the NAACP and the Urban League, because those were the two organizations that represented. If you ever needed a job, you always went through the Urban League.
Mhm.
And then after a while, there was a housing program. If you ever needed housing, you would go through the Urban League, because they knew what 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 apartments and uh, what who were friendly to Black people. You
Okay.
know, landlords as well as and as well as housing, people who were selling houses, who were who were who were friendly to African Americans. We were called colored back then,
Hmm.
but they said if you needed a job, you'd always go. If you were new or if you were looking for something, you'd always go through the San Diego Urban League, because you knew that you would be gaining access to some really good information. And And as a matter of fact, I was one of those test cases. John Johnson, when he was first a president back in the 60s, he sent me to the San Diego, the Bank of America. I believe it was the Bank of America. I can't remember what bank it was downtown. And I had to fill out these forms and do some applications and everything. And they called John Johnson back and told them that they weren't ready yet. They just weren't ready to hire Black people as tellers. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Black people could only sweep floors. We couldn't be tellers at the time.
Mm.
But back east, there were places where Black people didn't even couldn't shop. They were not waited on. Even in upstate New York, because upstate New York was supposed to be a lily white area anyway. And there was like pockets of Black people who were vestiges of the Underground Railroad, and Harriet Tubman dropped them off. And if they didn't get to Canada, they lived in Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo, New York, and they were safe to a certain degree. But there were some stories where the Black man would have Black people would own property, right, and have a farm, and they would be farming next to white folks. And during the Fugitive Slave Act, they would like get ready to round up the Black people that owned the land. And the people and their white employees had to say, "No, that's my slave. He's my property." Isn't that sad?
It is. It is. Most definitely.
Yeah. And you know, there were times my father didn't pass for white, but it was through convenient it was ethical convenience. Okay. Have you ever heard of that phrase?
No, I have never.
Well, I just heard of it. Ethical convenience is when you lie.
Okay.
But it's a convenient lie because you do it for a good purpose, supposedly. You have ethics, but you have to bypass them. To me, it's still lying, you know. But for ethical convenience sake, my father would go in, sign the papers, and buy a house. You know, he bought 5 houses before he died. Okay.
Wow.
And we lived in 1, 2, 3 of them. We lived in 3 of them before I moved out and got married, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we talked about redlining. You could probably go online and find all kinds of stuff about redlining.
I have, but I just feel that, you know, speaking to you, you break it down your way and give me different stories, you know, and that's very helpful. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you, the fact that you're doing this research and you're doing the work, and you're a great historian. You're going to help people open up their eyes about the great legacy that we have here, and the hidden legacies that we have, like the Blevins and all of the Black realtors that were here. There were like 2 or 3 Black realtors.
There's what is his name? Mr. Logan.
Yeah, Mr. Logan was one.
Girl, he's 105, I think.
Wow, the Logans. I remember the Logan twins.
Oh, them too.
The Logan twins were notorious. They used to screw everybody.
Oh, girl, I'm gonna have to cut that out. I'm not sharing this with anybody, but if I did, I'd have to cut.
I didn't know anything about it. I was married, right?
Right.
And in the 60s, they were telling me about the Logan twins. They
were so cool though, as old men.
I guess they learned from their mistakes. you know,
Okay.
everybody did, you know,
Yeah.
and but you know, I was part of that old guard, you know,
Mm,
of groups of people that came through. I remember Dr. Ford, J.R. Ford, John Ford was our family doctor, and
mhm.
he had a practice on Imperial Avenue. Everybody had something going on Imperial Avenue,
Yes.
and even Dr. Butcher, when he did his first practice, he joined J.R. Ford's medical group. Did you
Oh,
know?
wow. No, I didn't know.
Yeah, and I was married, and I got sick with a sore throat. And do you know that man hit on me? He was married to Vicky and everything, cute little Vicky. And he wanted to take me out to here. I had a sore throat. I think it was strep or something. I had a
Oh,
fever. He calls me into the office. I'm just tired. All I needed was some medicine. I thought he was just going to give me some medicine and send me on my way, or give me some bad news that my throat was really, really infected. And instead, he wanted to take me out to lunch. I'm going like, I said, what?
right.
I said, but but I'm married. I didn't put the onus on him. I just said,
Mm-hmm,
I'm married. And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
he's like, had a smile on his face, and he said, and so
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
my feelings were so hurt. My
Yeah.
feelings are so hurt, but that was sexism then, and it's still sexism now, you
Yeah. And
know?
it still keeps happening. It's just a continuous thing.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And but now, not just women, but men get hit on all the time too.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let's
True.
see. But you couldn't even practice in other areas. There was a cluster of dentists and doctors on 25th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jimmy Valentine was on one side of the street. Dr. John Kimbrough was on the other side of the street for dentistry. And then down the street was Dr. Richardson's office at 128 25th Street. And I remember that. And it was a block away from Imperial Avenue. And let's see and that's where I cut my teeth as a dental assistant, working with him on 28th 25th Street. And then when Albert became a dentist, he went to work for his dad right there until they made up enough money to move, because the complexion of the neighborhood was changing, as well as the convenience of the inconvenience of crime in the neighborhood was also
Mm-hmm.
happening as well.
Yeah.
And one of the oldest doctors was named Dr. Johnson. I remember I met Dr. Johnson. He was really old when I met him
Oh.
in the 60s. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was I can't remember whether he was a physician or a dentist, but I think he was one of the first dentists in San Diego.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, uh, Now that I'm 75, I'm still remembering this stuff. Hal Brown. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hal Brown with his white wife. Oh, Lord. And you know what? I knew Ron Karenga
Mm-hmm.
before he was Maulana Karenga. He was
Right.
at San Diego State as Ron Karenga. And I heard about Vernon Sukumu when he was Vernon Fontanet
Oh,
before he changed his name to Sukumu. I'm serious.
yeah. Yeah. I remember him telling me his last name. Wow.
His
Fontanet
his from
from
his from
Louisiana.
he's from New Orleans.
Yeah.
And when he met my mother, he tried to go down memory lane with my mother about some things that had happened in New Orleans, and my mother swore that there was just no discrimination, no racism at all. She didn't experience that whatsoever. And I was like really, really angry. And then Vernon said, because I didn't always call him Sukumu.
Mhm, mhm.
Then Vernon would say, he'd go, Andrea, you got to give her some slack. He said, there are Black people who had so much trauma happen to them that they can't even acknowledge. They have so much pain that they had to stuff all of that stuff. And so they pretend that it never happened to them. And my mother dealt with a lot of trauma, I found out. So, hey, it was hard for people back in the Jim Crow South. It really was. My father got beat up. I'm pretty sure your dad and Uncle Henry had to deal with licks from white people too,
Which they didn't share any of that, right?
No, and it was like it's like going into war. There are war stories that Black men will not tell us because it was so horrendous. If you think that it was hard for a white man during war, can you imagine having to pick up body parts and be assigned to to do some of the most horrific jobs in the service, in the Marines and in the Army that Black people had to do? It was really rough. Now, Mac doesn't even talk about some of the stuff that he had to deal with, God rest his soul. He didn't talk about some of the stuff he had to do. He would just say, that's top secret. I can't disclose that. I can't disclose. He was so dignified that he did not want to share that pain, that part of his past with me. Every once in a while, he would tell me some things, and I could read between the lines, like when he was homeless. But life has not been a crystal stair. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair, according to Craig.
Yeah, and I just said that the other day. I was gonna type it on my wall on Facebook.
By Langston Hughes, this famous poem.
Yep, I love
life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And Langston Hughes really captured a lot of the when he was younger. He did. He compromised as he had to in order to get published, though. And
I see.
And he compromised his values and even would throw people under the bus, like Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah,
we did a lot of work with him, and he refused to acknowledge it. He would lie, because it was all about survival. And that Dapper Dan with the 2 lives, he didn't care. Black women were still, a lot of people say, well, Black women didn't have it as hard as Black men. Well, it's relative. It's definitely relative. Relative to how you dealt with that pain, how you dealt with the pain. Even my little sister, Celeste, do you know Celeste was expelled from school and was kicked out of Claremont High School?
No.
You know why? She refused to wear a dress.
Okay, more power to that girl.
Well, she had lesbian tendencies, and she did not like wearing a dress.
Okay. They made you wear dresses?
Oh, there was nobody wore pants to school in the 60s.
Wow. Unbelievable.
The nursing outfits where the nurses have pantsuits and pants and and jackets. Women had nursing caps, big white nursing caps and white dresses that they wore. Even
how uncomfortable that was.
I don't know. I thought it was just part of my uniform. I had to wear white stockings, white shoes, and a white dress. And I had to keep it clean. It was hard for me.
Yeah, I bet.
I would try and skate every once in a while. I just didn't have the energy to wash my dress.
Okay.
Um, and I was really happy when they came out with blue dresses. You know, after a while, they had blue dresses that I could wear, shifts that were kind of cute. You know, they were
Mhm.
long. There were blue dresses in the late mid to late 60s. But yeah, my sister got kicked out of school because she refused to wear a dress. I mean,
Okay.
is that crazy? You know, she
Yeah.
really she ought to sue their asses. But you know, she never got a diploma. She had to get a GED somehow,
Mm.
and made it to UCSD for a while.
Okay. I
Yeah,
think she deserves an apology and she can get her diploma. I know I would do that. They probably would grant it to her because of
they
discrimination.
yeah, they probably would. They
Yeah.
probably would at her age. Do you know what? My sister looks so old right now. It isn't even funny.
Does she?
I couldn't believe it when I saw a picture of my sister sent me a video of herself,
Wow.
and I go, oh my goodness.
Oh,
Let me see if I can send it to you.
okay. I probably can't see it at the moment since I'm on my phone, but I will look at it. Just, yeah.
This is Celeste this week. Celeste Barnwell, and she just turned 70.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 5 years older than her.
Awesome. Okay. I'll have to look at it a little later. But yeah, Mike Norris just turned 75.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we either get older or we don't.
Yeah. So what can you do?
Just keep living till you don't.
Yeah.
You know. Oh.
So anyway, my sister took a picture of herself. I'm going like, dang.
When was the last time you seen her?
A couple months ago on her birthday,
Oh, okay.
I went up to see her and stayed the weekend with her for November 14th, which was her birthday.
Oh, okay.
You know, today is I think I told you that today marks the assassination of Martin Luther King.
Yeah, I
And it
always.
also marks, I believe, the signing of the Civil Rights Bill as well. You know,
In
civil
67.
rights.
What year was that? 67 or 64 or something?
It was 69, 70, you
Oh,
know, 69, 71 or something like that. I don't
yeah.
know when it was done, but you know, what's interesting is that there was a Voting Rights Act that was also enacted, and unfortunately it's never been codified so that it's permanent. Um,
Oh,
and part of it hasn't been an amendment to the Constitution yet.
mm,
So what can I say? But then, you know, equal rights for the Equal Rights Amendment for women has never been ratified either. And we didn't get a chance. We didn't get the right to vote. White women didn't get the right to vote until 1920.
20. And then we didn't until what, 64?
No, no, it was way longer than that because Fannie Lou Hamer got beat the shit. She got beat down. She
Mm,
lost her eyesight in one eye. If you ever look at pictures of Fannie Lou Hamer, She's got this
Yeah.
one lazy eye that's like
Mm,
this, and one lazy eye, one regular eye, and and so during the '60s, people were Louis Armand can tell you. Now, Louis is a historian. He remembers dates.
oh my
So if you
gosh.
really want to know civil rights history, talk to Louis because Louis was down there. He was in Mississippi,
Okay.
and he lived with Miss Hamer. He lived with Fannie Lou Hamer,
Wow.
and he was dispatched to register people to vote.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
he was
The
and
interview. I'll
he
have to.
did that. He did that in the summertime, when he was at when he was at Yale, and before he got married. In fact, he met his wife,
Mm,
who was living with Fannie Lou Hamer. That's how he met his first wife, his only wife.
okay.
Louis would never get married.
I know. And does he look the same? He doesn't age very much.
You know what? I have a picture of him, and it looks as if he's aging.
Is he?
But he sent me this picture of him, and I was just like totally shocked because it was. You need to turn the recording off.
Oh, girl. Yeah, you're right. Wait, I gotta see. How do you turn it off? Okay, let's see.
Just go down to the bottom, and
Okay.
there's a button that says record on this computer, and just click it,
Oh,
turn it off.
okay. Wait. Yeah. Okay. Hit recording and then
Turn it off.